Welcome to the Cocktail Guru Podcast,
a show about food, drink, and entertainment,
with a tight focus on the good life,
and all things delicious, luxurious, and fun.
I'm Jonathan Pogash, bartender, author, TV personality, and founder of the Cocktail Guru.
And I'm Jeffrey Pogash, wine and spirits professional, author, insatiable collector of culinary ephemera, and so people tell me, an engaging raconteur.
And my dad. The House of Lustau's Solera standout returns to the U.S. to encourage our friends from the beverage community, stronger and renewed, to join them again. You can submit your recipe from now until December 11th. Enter the Solera Hall of Fame and win a grand cash prize and a full week internship at Lustau in Jerez, Spain. Dad,
John.
Welcome to our season 2 premiere.
Well, this is very exciting. I can't believe we made it through season 1.
How was your hiatus? I think that's what they call it, and that's what they call it in the industry.
Fantastic. Sunning myself on the beaches of Hawaii and
oh wow! Why didn't you invite
Monaco?
me?
Well, I will the next time. Don't worry.
Okay.
But I couldn't be more excited about the second season, but especially about today's interview, because you know how excited I get when we have celebrity guests on the show, especially when they're from the world of television, film, and theater, as is the case with our next guest. Well, there's good reason for my excitement. I have been watching television since I was 5 years old. You know, the first show I ever watched was Farmer Alfalfa, a black and white cartoon which aired at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I just got hooked from that moment on. But let's fast forward a bit to age 14. This is all relevant information I'm giving you today.
I'm glad. I was wondering where you were going with this. But
I have to go into this before we introduce our guest. Let's fast forward to age 14 when my family and I took a trip to California. We visited San Francisco, Yosemite, and Sequoia National Parks. They were fantastic. But the highlight of this trip was Los Angeles, where we were given a private tour of the MGM studios in Culver City, now known as, I believe, Sony Pictures Studio. It was there that I watched the filming of My Favorite Martian. That was one of my all-time favorite shows. And I was able to meet and shake hands with the stars of the show, Ray Walston and Bill Bixby. Bill Bixby went on to star, of course, in The Courtship of Eddie's Father.
The Incredible Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk, eventually. That experience was the thrill of a lifetime, but I'm happy to report that the thrill is not gone, because today we are very lucky to have an extra special guest on our podcast. A 6-time Emmy Award winner who is also a 3-time Golden Globe winner, a Screen Actors Guild Award winner, and winner of 2 Tony Awards. I am just thrilled. He is probably best known for his role as Dr. Frasier Crane in the hit television series Cheers, and then in the hit television series, of course, Frasier. And I'm referring to the star of stage, screen, and television, Mr. Kelsey Grammer. And now we have another title to add to his curriculum vitae, and that is Brewmaster, because he owns a brewery called Faith American. So welcome, Kelsey Grammer.
Thank you, guys. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Wow, this is outstanding, and thank you for that soliloquy, Dad. It was amazing, but I love hearing about your childhood. I mean, having Kelsey Grammer on the Cocktail Guru podcast is a huge honor. And Kelsey, all of our guests, we always ask them one question before we get into the nitty gritty, the meat and potatoes of each episode. Mr. Kelsey Grammer, what is your desert island drink? So if you're stranded on a desert island, what would you want to have in your hand?
Well, honestly, probably coconut water.
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
That's great.
It seems to make the most sense. It might be actually something I could find there. So
Well, it's one of my favorites too.
Going as deeply practical as I can about that.
Yeah, very good.
I love that. So you would climb up the tree, you would grab the coconut.
Yes, indeed, I would. Yes.
Presumably, you might have no tools on there, so you would just slam it on the ground and you would open it up and drink.
I'll find some,
rocks.
log, probably chip off some, whatever tool I can fashion out of the rudimentary basics, that kind of thing.
Well, we're sampling your beer, Kelsey, Faith American, and it is delicious. This is the Faith Blue. It's really, really good.
Thank you.
It was rich. It was smooth. It was eminently drinkable. It was a delicious IPA.
Thank you.
Delicious. So please tell us something about the brewery and how it got started.
Our third flavor in the batch of the bunch, rather. We about 30 years ago, I bought a property in upstate New York, and it was near Kingston, New York, where I used to go to spend Thanksgivings with my grandfather and his best pal, Bill Carvel. And he lived on a little place that was called Copperhead Mountain Farm. And it was a very cool place for me to go when I was a boy. And I was raised by my granddad, Gordon. So it held and continues to hold a very dear place in my heart. And as soon as I had enough money to actually buy something, like a piece of land, I looked to the Catskills because that's sort of what I was familiar with. And I found this little property outside of, it's about 40 minutes past Woodstock and maybe 45 minutes from Kingston. And I fell in love with it. I actually chartered a helicopter. I was staying in the Hamptons, and I pretty much bought it the minute I saw it. And ever since then, I've been, spending summers there with my family. And about 12 years ago, I took my wife, Kate, there. She was not my wife at the time. And I guess it was a sort of a test, I suppose. I said, come on up and spend some time with me in my favorite place in the world. And she came down the mountain with a couple of her buddies, and she said, thank you for this place. And that was all I needed to hear. And she's been a key element of the reason I enjoy it today. But about 8 years ago, a contiguous piece of land that I'd always sort of fancied and prized came up for sale, and I bought it. And on that piece of land is an old barn. It was a dairy farm years ago. It was also one of the largest cauliflower farms on the East Coast in the 70s. Half the people that still live in Margaretville, which is where we're located, will say, oh, yeah, I used to pack cauliflower into punnets up there when I was a kid back in high school. So there's some real history there with the community. But this barn, I thought, well, I'm not going to be a dairy farmer. I'm just, not going to do cows twice a day and devote my entire life to being there because I actually am still an actor. So I started to think about beer and the possibilities of brewing there. And the water in upstate New York is sorry for that. Something just came through. The water up there is fantastic. Bubbles out of the ground, you can just drink it. It's the cleanest water in the world. It all goes down to New York City. This is the issue that came up after that. Anyway, I decided I was going to try to brew beer there.
Yeah.
What happened was I ended up putting a company together that was going to be a brewing company, and we were going to brew out of the Catskills. And then we found out that because it's the watershed, I couldn't use the water. Now, there is a law in the books in New York that you can use the water if it's on your land. However, that was, ended basically by what they called the Watershed Act of 1996, which I was aware of at the time. However, so I had to kind of improvise and come up with some other ideas. Yeah. And so I contract brew now with a couple of companies outside of Albany. The titular head of the company, of the brewery itself, the legacy of it is centered around the land there that I own. And the actual functional brewing is done off premise at this point. We have a little tavern up there. People are welcome to visit, but we're not open very much. It's sort of a seasonal thing, and we don't have a lot of people here yet. So this is what we're doing. We're selling in Atlantic City. We're selling in Buffalo, New York. So from Buffalo to Cape May, basically, the beer is available. Have we got full distribution yet? No, but we're actually working on it, and we have some very promising relationships starting out with some of the distributors we're working with. we introduced our first flavor about about 2.5 years ago, just before February of 2020. And
wow, the timing, huh?
so it was February of 2020, and 5 days later, they announced that. When I was there, they announced, this is in Las Vegas. They announced that the March Madness was not going to be held there anymore in Vegas. So that sent the beer business, as I had planned it in my head. I thought, well, let's open up in Las Vegas. We'll have people come from all over the world and say, gosh, we love this beer. Let's get it where we live. And then someone would come to me and say, we need your beer everywhere. Yeah. Well, that didn't quite happen. So I thought, I'm not going to freak out about it because we haven't opened up yet, really. We're not like even on the market. So I pulled back. I retooled a little bit, and I thought, well, let's introduce 2 new flavors. So I came with more of a traditional IPA, a little more West Coast IPA, amber colored, and has a nice little sort of bite and a little dry hopping at the end, which gives it some that more traditional sort of IPA value. And then the next flavor, which was just hatched late January this year, is the New England Blue Hazy. And so that's been really popular. Very good summer drink. But they love that hazy in the East Coast. So that's really been flying off the shelf.
They do. I know.
The first flavor is the ale, is the Faith American Ale. And that happens to be my favorite because that's the kind of beer I like to drink.
I think it was the Blue Hazy that we were tasting.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
It's a good beer.
Kelsey, where did the interest in beer and brewing beer come from?
Oh, well, actually, it's all because of the land. It's the land. That barn.
The land, yeah. That
place is just so, what can we do that reflects our love of this place and a desire to return the land to prosperity and hopefully involve the community in something they can look to and be proud of as well. And, we haven't, finished our dream yet. We haven't fulfilled our goals yet, but that has actually started to happen. And so all the beers are, rather than being, the kitschy kind of phrase in craft brewing now is, it's sort of funny insider kind of stuff, goose your buddy, or, screw your pal, or, whatever, fat this, fat that, beer. And I just thought I'd rather kind of try to reflect our love of the land and our love of history and our love of America. And my daughter's name happens to be Faith. So several things kind of came together at the same time, but there's no mistake that it's called Faith American. I mean, I love America. I love everything we're capable of doing. I love the fact that we're, always sort of in process and figuring out what the hell we are from generation to generation. But I believe in this country, and I believe in good beer. So it just became a good marriage. I was not a beer maker in my head. I'm still not really a brewer. I give notes to guys who are great brewers, and I say, I'd like to try this. Is that something we can do? And they'll look at me and think, yeah, we can try that. Or they'll say, oh, we did something like that a while ago. A lot of guys like to do that. Oh, yeah, I did something just like that back when, back before the Punitive Wars. But, all right. So this is not an original idea. Okay, fine. I understand. And then they'll come up with something, and then we talk about it and how do I want it to taste? What's the profile I'm looking for? And then we'll try a brew. Now, some of the guys don't want to actually brew something without me paying for it. So I've spent a lot of money just trying some stuff and throwing away quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah. Sure.
But to me, it's worth it. I don't want anybody to have a taste of beer that isn't beer they really like. And so I like the beer I'm selling. It's certainly possible that somebody won't think it's the greatest beer in the world, but there are moments when I'll have a sip of the ale or of any one of them, depending upon what food I'm eating with them, and I'll think that's the best beer I ever had. So I'm very happy.
Well, as a great beer lover, I can say these are tremendous beers. They're absolutely delicious. There are 3 in the line right now, correct?
Yeah.
Faith American Ale, Faith American Blue Hazy, and Calico Man.
Yeah, Calico Man. Calico Man is based upon, this is part of the idea about the history. The hillside to me looks like Calico during the fall. Mm-hmm. It's not supposed to be a seasonal beer, and so I'm a little confused. I may actually kind of rebrand it a little bit, maybe change the picture on the can a bit. have less of a seasonal flair about the design. But when I saw the hillside one day in full color, like October 7th, it's always around October 7th where I am because it gets cold faster there. It reminded me of a calico cat. The Calico Man inspiration is from a group of people called the Calico Indians, who in 1845 staged a rebellion in Delaware County in upstate New York because of rent they were forced to pay for land that they've been farming for a long time. And then what happened was the families that owned that land hadn't paid their taxes. So 30 years in arrears suddenly got passed on to the people who were farming the land. And because they couldn't pay it, they took all their stuff. And the sheriffs were sent in to seize all their property and sell it at auction. So to stop this, to rebel against it, the Calico Indians, or Calico Man as I like to call them, wore outfits of calico, which was a newly imported material from India that their wives were wearing for aprons and using around the house. And they dressed themselves up looking like what they thought was their best rendition of sort of primitive savages. And there's some pretty scary looking pictures. And they went around raids and burned down a couple of barns and tormented the constabulary a bit. And then finally one guy was shot. And his name was Osmond Steele. And he's very famous for having said at the tavern, the drinking tavern in Andes, New York, the night before his death, that lead would never pierce steel. Sure enough, they shot him the next day.
Oh, my goodness.
21 guys were sentenced to prison. They were sent all over. It was a federal crime. They were sent to several different federal prisons around the country. And one of them was sent to a place in Illinois. And it happened to be just nearby a town called Springfield. And it turned out that he secured some services from a young lawyer named Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
And Abraham Lincoln and this man ended up being partners, basically, in starting the Republican Party. So it's kind of it's got a lot of history.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
Who was the good patroon? I remember hearing about that.
Patroon was the guy that owned the land, who's, when he finally died, he never asked them for any rent. He never asked the farmers for any rent. He thought, come on, I got so much land here, I don't even go there. Let them use it. It was his children, when he died, that were told they owed a ton of money by the government. The U.S. government, who had decided it was probably wisdom to go ahead and let the people that owned the land before the revolution keep the land. So that's what happened. Thousands of acres of land that had been deeded or given as royal gifts from the King of England, from the King of Denmark, from Holland. The Dutch were very, very influential there. That's why the name patroon.
Sure.
They were allowed to keep their land as long as they would actually pay a little tax. So that didn't happen, and they had caused some trouble. But about 2 years later, they were all the guys that had been sent to jail were actually, their sentences were lifted and commuted, and they were allowed to go back to their homes and start to do some farming.
I have to say that Kelsey, you are quite a storyteller, and I can only imagine, what it would be like sitting around a campfire and enjoying your beer and hearing stories told by you, because it is absolutely amazing to hear.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, someday maybe we can just do that, because it's a great property. We've got about 500 acres up there, and it's it's not a giant piece of land, but it's enough for us, and it's a lovely place, and it inspires a lot of ideas from.
While we're here with you, Kelsey, can we mention the Frasier reboot?
Sure. We're dealing with some notes just yesterday from the studio and from the network, which is Paramount Plus. Sort of my home, actually. I worked on Paramount a lot for 35 years, I guess, off and on, and it's looking pretty good. We have some hurdles to go through, because we actually have we ended up in a situation where some of the legacy cast didn't want to return. So we said, okay, great, got it, understood. So in a weird way, it's as though offered us a world that's a completely new Frasier, a completely third act, which I'm very excited about. So we've got some fun ideas I can't share with you at this moment, but I think we'll be seeing something on TV pretty soon.
So the trailer that I saw is an accurate or somewhat accurate depiction of what we should look forward to?
Dear God. No, it's
or is it just an attention grabber?
I don't know. A film student's like fun idea of what might it be like, or I have no idea who's responsible for it. It's crap. But it's like you have to kind of respect them for pouring through it to that extent and coming up with an idea that they found enough footage to reflect what they thought they wanted to see. It's pretty much all of my performance from Boss, the show I did after Frasier. I did another sitcom for a while. I did a sitcom called Hank, and I did a sitcom called Back to You with Patty Heaton. The one with Patty Heaton was a pretty good show, but the writers went on strike. We were like 3 shows into it. We thought, what are you doing, guys? And they said, it's the best thing we've ever done. I have no idea if it ever ended up making any money for them, but we lost that show as a result. And the show Hank beforehand, it just wasn't funny. It just wasn't funny. I tried.
Did you know that's an interesting point? Did you know while you were, I know a lot of actors while they're doing it, they might think to themselves, I'm not really sure if this is going to work, or was it, afterwards when you were watching or when you saw reactions to it that you were like, it's not that funny?
Well, you go ahead with your best, with the most hopeful frame of mind you can, and in that case. When we were pitching the show with a young writer who was he'd had some pretty good pedigree. The ideas he was pitching, I thought to myself, there's an idea that I think that can work. We were a little wrapped up in the phenomenon of the 2008 crash, about how suddenly everybody who'd been sort of successful didn't have a career anymore, and they had to kind of freak out and find a way to get through things. And, I'm not so sure that was a big slice of American interest at the time. Honestly, I think everybody was kind of suffering equally and trying to care about the fact that somebody who used to be rich wasn't rich anymore, was something they wanted to watch. I don't know. Yeah. It just needed to be funnier, honestly. The guy was doing his best to keep his family together. That seemed like a good idea for a sitcom. But the writing was stylistically a little more like Everybody Loves Raymond. Well, Raymond does that well. That wasn't my what should say, my bowl of wax, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. It wasn't my thing, and it didn't quite resonate. And when we were doing it, I remember I called the president of Warner Bros. At the time. Lovely guy, fantastic conversation. I just said, look, we just finished the show the night before. I think it was the 11th show that we shot, and I said, when can we put a bullet in this thing? And he said, oh, gosh, we got orders from overseas, blah, 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 blah. We have to at least fulfill the first 13. And a day later, a phone call came from the president of ABC saying, no, let's not go any further with this. Wow. I said, oh, hallelujah. And honestly, an hour later, I got a phone call from a producer on Broadway, Barry Weissler, and he said, are you free to fly over to England and see a show we've been producing over there that we want to bring over called La Cage aux Folles? And I said, as a matter of fact, I am. And that changed my life.
That's amazing.
I am so happy you mentioned that, because I was looking for a way to get into a discussion about that. If you have the time to do that. In 1983, I went to the Palace Theater. And I saw a show called La Cage aux Folles with George Hearn and Gene Barry.
Yes, of course. Yeah,
and it was absolutely fantastic. And then I was thrilled when I saw the revival with you as the lead, you and Douglas Hodge as the lead. And I've been poring over tapes of the revival of La Cage aux Folles, and it is absolutely fantastic. And I don't know how many people out there realize you have a beautiful singing voice.
Oh, thank you.
I know you studied at Juilliard.
People more kind of understand, yes, he does sing as well, but it's actually how I started. I started just in choir when I was 14 years old. But a guy who came in and said, "I want every boy in this class to come in and sing for me. I'm going to put you in a choir." And we were like, "Oh yeah, right." And then half of us showed up and tried, and several of us got on this little music program with this man. Richard Mitten was his name, and it started me toward a career in performing.
Yes.
I wasn't really keen on doing anything other than surfing at the time, but the singing opened up a door for me, and I didn't think I'd be an opera singer, which is where my voice coach at the time thought I could go, and so we departed on that. And I thought, I think this acting thing might be better. So,
and what was Kelsey? What was the role that you got early on, where you were like, okay, wow, I have this role. This is amazing. I think I'm going to be okay.
Okay, that role was cigar smoking Southern gentleman called Ben Hubbard in a show called Little Foxes by Lillian Hellman.
Yeah.
I was 16 years old when I played it. He's supposed to be, I think, 52. But I did a hell of a job, and honestly, it was quite an extraordinary experience. I mean, it went really well, and it was I discovered that this was something I think was a passion I didn't know I had. I mean, I loved Shakespeare at the time. I did read all the time. So I guess I was qualified without knowing I was. But my love of language, and then this ability to just kind of loan myself to the emotion or to the fantasy of a writer and fill it was my ticket out, I guess you could say.
And you were in another revival that I love. In 1965, I went to another Broadway show with my parents at the Anta Washington Square Theater, and it was called Man of La Mancha.
Oh, yeah.
With Richard Kiley and Joan Diener. And I know that you were in a revival in London of Man of La Mancha. You played Don Quixote.
Always wanted to play it. I absolutely loved it. Richard Kiley was a buddy of mine.
Really?
I'd seen different things, during Hollywood days where, like sort of Oscar night at some party or Emmys, I'd seen him there or some charity thing. He was just such a terrific guy and so lovely. And I remember hearing his performance of that on the radio a lot. And I think Jack Jones sang it as well in a pretty popular rendition. A lot of guys have sung it, but to dream the impossible dream is
incredible.
one of the most beautiful songs ever written.
Yes.
And it is one of the most beautiful ideas ever conceived. It is how I've always wanted to live my life. So to get a chance to sing it and to play it was presumptive joy, and it got a very strange reaction. We opened up at the sort of the crest of the Me Too movement, and so there's a rape scene in it. Well, it was written, I'm forgetting his name right now, Cervantes. In the classic novel, which is one of the greatest novels in the world. I think it may be still the most read novel in the world. And Don Quixote, Man of La Mancha, and they objected so much to the idea that there was a rape portrayed on stage.
Yeah,
I was actually quite blown away by it because I thought, well, it's a story that's 400 years old. What are we doing? What's happening here? And this objection, I learned, was sort of historical as well, because 50 years previous, which was the last time Man of La Mancha opened in London, they wrote the same thing. They found it offensive that the girl was raped. It is offensive. It's
yes, it is, and that's the point.
That's the whole idea.
That's the point.
And that she finds her way forward through the faith of this man who believes in a code that in her world does not exist. It gives her a new identity. It gives her hope.
Exactly.
It's a fantastic story. He saves her life. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my father and I both kind of started as actors. I moved to New York City to become an actor after college, and then I got into the bar industry that way. So I'm a huge geek about film, TV, theater, and one of my idols is the great James Burrows. So Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to meet him, and then kind of the experience working for an amazing Hollywood showrunner like James Burrows?
Sure. I actually knew who his dad was, right? Because I used to watch What's My Line when I was a kid, and he was on one of the panels, So, it was Abe Burrows, And he was,
sure.
So, when I heard the name Jimmy Burrows, I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what his story is. And somebody said, Jimmy Burrows, famous director, blah, blah, blah. He's Abe Burrows' kid. And I thought, oh, that's the connection. But I met Jimmy at my audition for Frasier, for Cheers. And
Cheers.
The role on Cheers. And he was a lovely guy, straight out of, whatever I thought the 80s Hollywood would look like. And he was very pleasant. He said, let's go meet Ted and Shelley. And so we sat down with them, and I read a couple of scenes with them. And they said, okay, let's go across the street. He seemed very happy about all that. And we went across the street, and there was a boardroom, it seemed like, a long, long table, which ended up being the place where they did readings every week, beginning of each week. But I sat down and said hello to everybody, and then I pulled out my little sheets. I didn't have them memorized because I'd been told years ago, you don't have to memorize it. They're not looking for you to be the perfect person. They want to see one moment of truth. So I thought I've always relied on that, because then they know that, they can trust this actor to give them truth. And so we read the scenes with Ted and Shelley, and I read through, there were, I think, 2 basic scenes, and there wasn't a single laugh in the room. There were about 15 people in the room. I thought, well, would have laughed at what was funny. So I guess they didn't think it was funny. So I stood up and I put the sheets down, and I said, you know what? Thank you very much. I'm going to go out there on the street and see if I get some laughs out there. And so I turned around, I walked down and went down the stairs. I called my old friend Lois at that point. I said, Lois, what are you doing? Let's go down to San Diego, because I had spent some time in San Diego acting. That was my first job at the Old Globe Theater. And Lois said, well, nothing, let's go. So we drove down. We stayed at this old place near Balboa Park, and had a couple of giggles and saw Craig Noel, who used to run the theater and stuff like that. And then I just said, well, I'm going back to New York. I drove home. I drove back to L.A. to turn in my rental car and spend my last night in the hotel room, which was the Hollywood Holiday Inn on Hilton and Vine. On Highland and Vine, which is now the big Kodak theater. It's converted.
Yeah. Sure.
But I got to the desk, and the guy behind the counter said to me, he said, Mr. Grammer, oh, hello. There's a whole bunch of messages for you. You want to take them here? They're sitting up in your room, too. I said, oh, fine. I'll just go up there and grab them. So I went up to grab my little bag, and when I walked in, there was a bottle of Dom Perignon sitting on the table.
Wow.
I opened it up, and it said, welcome to Cheers.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Oh my.
That gave me chills.
Yeah, me
cool.
too.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
And
Wow.
that changed your life.
Yeah, Jimmy, to get back to the first point of it, Jimmy ended up being a monumental part of my life. I mean, and by default, I became a big part of his life too. We did some great stuff together, and he, of course, he is the premier director of sitcom in history. There is no question about it. There's nobody even a close second, except for me. But we had a great time together, and we did some stuff that I'm very proud of, and can point to looking back and say that was funny. And our relationship is real and good, and he and I, it's not seen eye to eye on some things, but we always love the fight. We love the fact that we're hatching something creative together.
Yeah.
And I just have so much love for him. It's just straight out love. There you go.
Well, my favorite shows as an adult, favorite sitcoms were Cheers, starting in order, Taxi, then Cheers, then Wings, then Frasier.
You got Jimmy Burrows.
All James Burrows shows.
There you go. Yeah.
And so, I mean, 2 shows, Cheers and Frasier, both ran 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
That is an incredible repertoire, and you are really you are the king of TV. And I've heard a lot of actors talk about actors who've worked in film, TV, and theater, which you've done all of, and also behind the microphone you've done voice work, and we cannot forget Sideshow Bob from the Simpsons, because that is my generation. That is just the ultimate. But how did the Simpsons come about for you?
The Simpsons thing was Sam Simon, who was one of the original producers of The Simpsons, was a writer on staff at Cheers, and Sam and I were pals. I liked him, and we enjoyed just shooting the blank around. And I would come on set every day, and I'd always sing "Oh, the Good Life." This was my walk into work song, and it had been for years, even before I started doing film work or television work. And Sam called one day and said, "I've been doing this thing, Kels. It's a new show, The Simpsons, and we've got this character. There's been a sidekick of Krusty the Clown for a while. He's never spoken. We'd like him to be very erudite, and he has to sing a Cole Porter song." And I figured, you're the guy, you sing, right? And you're still singing, aren't you? And I said, "Yeah, I'm still singing. What the hell?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd be glad to do it." So I was arranged to go in one morning after a trip to Chicago, where I was sort of a mascot for the all-star hockey team. So it was meant to be sort of like a coach in name only. And I actually hit the ice while I was there. I'd had a couple of drinks, and I cut my head open. So when I got to, it was pretty amazing, but I was fine. They handled it at Cheers. They handled it by writing in a line, "Suffice it to say that Lamaze class is not the place to flirt."
Fantastic.
Great. Lois swatted him with an iron can when they got home.
Wow.
So I got to the recording session for Sideshow Bob, and I'd already decided I was going to do an impression of Ellis Rapp, who was a famous American theater figure. And they said, "Kelsey, you okay? You're all right? What's happened? Are you up to this?" "I'm up to it. It's fine. This is how I live." And so he came to life that day as Robot. It's just he just caught on. I had a friend who was teaching at the time in Evanston, Illinois, who sent me a picture from the day after the show aired for the first time. And it was a giant graffiti mural on the side of one of the dorms of Sideshow Bob, his funny hairline, and a banner across it that read "Free Sideshow Bob."
That's awesome.
It caught on right away. It was a very funny thing.
And one thing also that I'm curious about before we let you go, because we want to be respectful of your time. I've heard a lot of interviews with like Seinfeld and Jennifer Aniston and all these people who are on longstanding sitcoms and who've also done theater and film. What is this? What schedule do you prefer? I know that there's sort of a completely different schedule with theater when you're doing a film and when you're doing a sitcom. And a lot of sitcom stars are like, "Man, I'd love to do another sitcom," because those schedules are like cushy and all of that.
Greatest schedule in the world.
Yeah,
it's like going to high school for a living. You work once a year, and you take 3 months off. Maybe go do a movie if you want to, but you don't have to. And the daytime schedule is wonderful. I mean, especially if you've got a good, well-oiled group, and Jimmy always directed the group he got. With Cheers, there was a lot of mayhem, a lot of craziness, and one was out too late this night, the other was out too late that night, and one wouldn't come in because his iridologist said his eyeball looked bad. There's all sorts of stuff going on all the time. So he was just sort of hang on for dear life and let everybody kind of run. With Cheers, we would finish a shoot night usually around 1, 2, sometimes even 3 a.m. With Frasier, it was such a theatrical bunch anyway, and they'd come to work. We would start shooting at around 7 o'clock, and about 9:30 we'd be done. And so it was like a whole life. We sort of broke in a new director, Pam Fryman, at the time. About 3 or 4 years into the show, we were running the show, and we did a camera blocking day, which was the busiest day. That's the hardest day. We were done around 3 in the afternoon. We started at 10, and she said, "Well, that's it. We're not doing anything else." I said, "Pam, do you have children?" She said, "Yeah." "Do you like your home life?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, go enjoy it." So, okay, we're going home. It was a shock to her system, but she understood it from that point on that we were meant to be there for as short amount of time as possible.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of children, I just want to tell one short story about my grandson, whose name is Ethan. I have 2 other children. Jonathan's children live in Massachusetts. Ethan lives here near me in New Jersey. And I told him that we were going to have Kelsey Grammer for an interview on the podcast. And he said, "Who?" I said, "Well, Kelsey Grammer." And I showed him some of the things that you have done. One thing caught his eye. He said, "What? He was in Toy Story 2?
Right.
Really? Yeah. You were Stinky Pete in Toy Story 2. That got his attention. And you have won him over forever because of that. Now he has researched you, and he knows everything there is to know about Kelsey Grammer. He's 9 years old.
The good thing about my career is that generation after generation is introduced to it, yes, step by step, piece by piece. I have had 9-year-olds walk up to me and say I'm their favorite actor, and I think to myself, how is that possible? I say, I watched every Frasier. I think, you are the most delightful child. A 9-year-old kid that walked up and said, "I've watched every Frasier," and it happens a lot. It's kind of wonderful. And the other response happens too. Who is the first thing, and then they start to go, oh. He's spent his whole lifetime trying to entertain me at different ages, at different generations. Yeah. So it's been a very gratifying life that way. And to segue back to the beer, I certainly hope that the beer enjoys the same kind of popularity in time. It's starting out.
Absolutely.
And we've had a lot of great response in Atlantic City. We've had some good response from the guys at what used to be the Dennis Hotel, which is now Valley.
Bally's.
Right, and you have a little connection. You've got a little connection to the hotel, yeah.
I go to the Dennis Hotel when I was a kid.
Yes.
When I was 6, 7, and 8 years old, my granddad was organizing. My granddad ran Chevron for a while out of Perth Amboy, New Jersey, and they always had their convention down there at the Dennis because he loved it, and so I loved it too. So now it's fun to kind of walk in and remember some of what happened there when I was a boy. I'm excited the beer's there, and I'm hoping to get Jerry to put on all 3 flavors because he actually needs to. You really can't enjoy it unless you enjoy all 3, and to add whatever when we bring it in. My ultimate goal is to make Faith American sort of Atlantic City's beer of choice, and to maybe have that move across the country. Who knows? But for now, we enjoy the art of making beer. The great enjoyment I also get from seeing people drink the beer and like it, and it's been really popular. Some places in New Jersey, it's really, really popular. So New York and New Jersey is where we're basically available now, and we're going to go step by step, state by state, and roll it out slowly so we don't end up, behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
Well, we know Faith American will be a great success.
Thank you.
Everywhere.
Yes, and Kelsey Grammer, you're an amazing entertainer and storyteller, and you never stop working, it seems. And my father and I can connect to that because we also just love working and love hustling. And when you do what you love, it obviously doesn't feel like work.
Yeah,
right.
Quite exotic.
I've never worked a day in my life.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's where we're at. It's wonderful. I hope to pass that on to my kids.
Well, thank you so very much.
And cheers to you, Kelsey Grammer.
Cheers, Kelsey.
Thank you very, very much.
Take care.
Tipple Time is sponsored in part by Ferrand Dry Curaçao and Perfect Purée Mango Passion.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the very first Tipple Time. I'm so excited. It's Jonathan here, of course, it's me. I'm going to make for you this wonderful cocktail that I created all by myself, ladies and gentlemen. It's called the Fall Shandy. It's a variation on the classic shandy, which is, of course, sort of a beer lemonade type of situation. But this is easy enough to make at home. And also for all of you folks working in bars and restaurants, this is great because it utilizes a couple of nice bar type products, which I love. So first of all, we'll start with our nice Pilsner glass over here. And I'm actually going to add my ice. And I'm just using, regular ice machine ice. But if you've got your fancy ice, please go ahead and be fancy because cocktail making is fancy. And I like some good cocktail ice, but this is just from my refrigerator, which is, of course, fine, obviously, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to start off with this Perfect Purée of Napa Valley, their mango passion fruit. Perfect Purée is amazing because they're great for industry professionals. Guys, there's definitely a labor shortage these days, and you may be short of time with your prep. So using a puree like this that's already made, ready, available, comes frozen, you thaw it out. It's just a great addition to your cocktail making skills. They also have this cool trade program where they can get you samples. So we'll throw the link on how to get that right at the bottom. But here we go. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and add 1.5 ounces of my Perfect Purée of Napa Valley Mango Passion. This is one of my favorite products. And my dad loves this too. This is Pierre Ferrand Dry Curaçao. So it is an orange flavored liqueur. It is so nice, crisp, refreshing, great in really any all year round seasonal cocktails. We're going to throw 1 ounce of that into this nice footed Pilsner glass is what I would call it. If you're watching at home, if you're just listening, then I'm describing as best as I possibly can. I'm opening up a beer right now, and this is just a lager, but you can also use an ale, and we're just going to top it off, literally topping off our drink just like that. Maybe you can hear the ice jiggling. I definitely can. And I have my bar spoon right over here. I'll give it a little bit of a stir. Ooh, I can smell that mango, the passion. Actually, you can smell both ingredients very nicely, and the beer and the Pierre Ferrand Dry Curaçao. So I'm getting, of course, fancy as I do with my cocktails. You can have a fresh herb as a garnish, but I decided to grab the last of my nasturtiums from my garden, from my home garden. So this is a nasturtium flower. It is edible. This is a nasturtium leaf. Oh, it's so beautiful. A couple of nasturtium flowers. How about that? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my fall shandy. So cheers to you all. Take care.
Tipple Time is sponsored in part by Ferrand Dry Curaçao and Perfect Purée Mango Passion.
And here is today's top off. While building your cocktail in a cocktail shaker, add the liquid ingredients first and then the ice before you shake your drink or before you stir your drink. This ensures that your drink is not over diluted and will result in a more balanced cocktail.
That does it for today's show. If you enjoy what we do, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also support the show with a small monthly donation to help sustain future episodes. Just click on the donate button at the top of our website and choose your donation amount. To learn more about future guests, visit www.thecocktailgurupodcast.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok.
The Cocktail Guru podcast is produced by First Reel Entertainment and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and is available via Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.